This is a lesson for business guys. Surround yourself with genius.
Is when you come together with your board because you realize, wow, there's an energy, there's an excitement in the room and an anticipation that is growing when you are together.
I never take a board position without actually me sitting together for a day to do some strategic consulting on the company before I join anything.
Welcome to Get Your House in Order, where the Medici brothers, investors and entrepreneurs, Chris Auditore and Dr. Philip Zimmermann, discuss timeless principles of success, significance and legacy. A podcast for business owners who want to design a beautiful life and a beautiful business. Sponsored by the one and only exclusive Medici community.
Welcome back to Get Your House in Order, where we talk about creating a beautiful life and a beautiful business. And today the topic is the genius circle. Who is in your strategic room? So when we talk about Get Your House in Order, there should be one room where you actually have a genius circle gathered together so that you can talk about strategy. There is this old saying that you're the average of the 5 people you spend the most amount of time with. And so why are you laughing?
Well, because I spend so much time with you, and I'm just like, you just took my level down.
Well, I would argue, and I would have the audience argue a different way.
Keep going with your introduction. It was good when you started.
Well, you are the average of the 5 people you spend most of your time with, and sometimes you can't choose them, brother. But you still have 4 that you can actually be strategic about. One comes by blood, at least in my world. Well, the truth is that, Chris, our life has been in so many, a lot of the good things that have happened to us, and also the bad things, often go back to a few people and to people that we have in the room. And so having a group and having a input from others to actually kind of really that we as business owners, we can fool ourselves. I mean, we can believe our own stuff, and so it has been such a good thing for us to work so closely together, because we kind of challenge each other, but to have other people to kind of really challenge us is such a vital point.
I want to talk about a fresco because I just wrote a chapter on this topic. Surround yourself with genius. Who's in your inner circle? And the fresco that I want to talk about, and I want to include this here in the video part of the podcast, is actually is a fresco in the Palazzo Pitti in Florence, in Firenze, where Vanini, a century later, did a fresco in the Sala Grande ground floor, where you see a depiction of Lorenzo de Medici. This is the second book I'm writing on the Medici family coming out, and he's in the center, but he's surrounded by people, and then if you're just a normal tourist and you look at it's like there's Lorenzo, you recognize him because he his nose is very recognizable. He looks like a boxer, and he's got some people around it, and if you get a good art historian to tell you kind of the background of the story, is that actually all these people surrounding Lorenzo are the most brilliant people of the century that he had curated around him. There's Angelo Poliziano, there's Pico della Mirandola, there's Michelangelo, and many others. They've all been, I think, except for one, they've all been recognized, because obviously it's centuries later, that his magnificence. Let me put it this way. At the end of his life, they gave him this term, the Magnificent, Lorenzo the Magnificent. Okay. His magnificence wasn't that he was so great. His magnificence was that he got great people around him. And when I understood this image, and I looked at the fresco, and I was there at the Palazzo Pitti, I'm like, shoot, this is a lesson for business guys. Surround yourself with genius. You are not, you don't need to be the smartest and best person in the room, you can orchestrate who's with you in the room. And so the second image that I want to give out here is, the actually almost like the image of an orchestra. Think of an orchestra, and you, in a sense, as the business owner, you're the conductor. You've got the most brilliant violinist, and you've got the best cello players, and you've got the most gifted musicians together in the room. Think of the Vienna Philharmonic or Berlin Philharmonic, and then there's this conductor, with a little stick in his hand. I don't even know what you call that, but he's kind of and then he, in a sense, he brings out the brilliance of the orchestra, with some simple but very refined moves. And I think this is a great way to think of us leading companies. And this is why I wanted to address this here in the podcast, and talk about business owners.
Well, as you are mentioning that, I feel like one of the things that needs to be in place, at least when I look at my own life, is that you need to be, you need to have made peace with yourself, and not be insecure. And for
it's a very good point.
For anybody who listens, our backstory is so Chris is a lot of things came natural to you. You were good at school. You were a reader early on. I'm dyslexic. I went to therapy, speak therapy, for most of my childhood. I had a lot of things not going for me. So there was a lot of things that that came natural to you. They were not natural to me, and my superpower, as always I say, is I can outwork anybody, and I can kind of get study and learn, but it's not because it came natural, because I had to outwork everybody to actually just make it. But at some point, I remember I needed to just be okay with that and realize that there is no, rather than this defining me in a room where people are of a different status or are more brilliant, that I actually bring something to the table. Didn't look through the lens of being of my weakness, kind of really being intimidated by people, but actually kind of like, oh, you can make me better. I can learn from you, and all of a sudden I realize, that's all in my mind. As more as I get to know people, everybody brings that to the table. So I learned that a long time ago that my when I do now, I spoke in front of thousands, and I kind of heard this somewhere, and it's really stuck with me. But my confidence comes in my intention that I want to serve. My confidence comes through the intention that I want to really do something good, that I mean it well. That's where I have confidence, that I actually have something to give, that I'm here to serve. When I'm in front of an audience, I don't get nervous because my confidence is not in my gifts.
You don't want to impress.
And it's not in my gifts, because I might fumble, but in my intention. And people pick up on your intention, and that resonates with them. I had people come to me after I spoke and said this was the best talk they ever heard. Well, I don't give the best talks. The first talk I gave, where my dad listened, he said he never heard a talk shouted in half sentences. This was the feedback and the love I got from my father. After I gave my first talk that he listened to. So I am not the best public, but people pick up on the intention that I actually. I'm totally fine with myself. I've made peace, and that's why I can actually introduce people around me.
Yeah. So thanks so much for being so open here and saying that, Philip. It takes also character to put it this way. Here's how I would put it today for business leaders. My experience is either people to think too high of themselves, or they think too low of themselves. Okay, we all know some people who just idiots, and that they just think the world centers around them, they just kind of lost in some cloud, and then they want to command everyone and think too high of themselves. Or on the other side, the insecurity is people think too low of themselves. And both basically kills what we're talking about today. So what we're talking about today is how can you be the one to orchestrate genius around you? Mm-hmm. And the first rule is you need to get over yourself. I think is a very good point here. Is if your ego is too big, you're not going to get that with other people. You need to have the right intentions, and I think also the right attitude and posture about doing that. Otherwise, people will, specifically very smart people, they pick up on your shit. It's like, if you are just in an ego game, if it's just about you and getting your will pushed through in every conversation. And I want to talk about boards today. It is actually curating advisory boards, curating your board of advisors. I want to talk about that. But the one who's orchestrating is a central figure. I mean, I just gave the illustration of the orchestra. I mean,
yes.
You think you just a man with a stick. It's like what exactly is his job?
Why is he the highest paid person here with the stick?
Why do we pay him so much money?
So we believe a lot in actually getting people together in masterminds and in groups where we can actually curate these experiences, because it's not just about getting together with a bunch of peers, and it's you need to orchestrate this well. I remember one of the masterminds that I've put together. It was a mastermind of I think 11 or 12 people. They paid 25,000 to join the mastermind, and I remember we met for a 2-day meeting, and you set the stage as the one who orchestrates it. You take you make sure the vulnerability is there, but you still get progress. But what was kind of this lesson from these 2 days that kind of stood out the most from me was the honesty of also kind of the frustrations that everybody was sharing, and that gave hope to everybody else. Sometimes the only thing that will make you last is that you get a little bit of hope. And in that room, when everybody was sharing also, we talked about our wins, but we also talked about what is frustrating. And everybody was, when person A was talking, everybody was nodding. I know that frustration. I thank you that I don't have that one. I had that one last year. And the next person would say, and all of a sudden there was this encouragement and hope that you were just together. We are in this together, and that gave a motivation, apart from what we learned or what breakthroughs we experienced, can be such a driver to kind of just keep going when you are also at a point where you really need some hope.
Okay, so first thing we said here is, you get over yourself and also be self-confident in curating genius around you. The second thing I want to say is that you need to go cross-disciplinary. So if you look at this fresco painting by Vanini here in the Palazzo Pitti, the people around Lorenzo are not just all architects. They are not all business people, but they are architects, philosophers, theologians, sculptors, painters, intellectuals, business people. It's a mixed bunch of people. And this is actually what I think we as business owners need. Now, here, let me just set the stage here. If you run a company, you've got people below you because you're the boss of the company. This is our audience here. This is who we're talking to: entrepreneurs, business owners. Okay, so you hire people for positions within the company: marketing, sales, product development, blah blah blah. Okay, so you have all these people below you. Now, the people we're now talking about surrounding you. You are the master orchestrator. You don't need let's say some more executive hired kind of leaders that just kind of you have a chat with. You don't need that. Okay, because you already have that in the organization. What you now need around you is people with a complete different lens, but who are the best in what they do. Okay, and they speak some wisdom. If you set the stage right into what you're working on as a company. So I've helped companies put boards together. Just how do you orchestrate that? That actually you've got this creative tension mix in the room, where when we get together, it's not just eating cake, drinking coffee, and looking over some numbers, blah blah blah. It is, getting you and your business to a whole nother level because you've got strategic insight.
Yeah, I mean, when I think of a board meeting, I want to jump out of the window because that's how the first board meetings that I've experienced, they're the most boring kind of a thing.
If your board meeting is boring, you're doing something wrong here.
And that's why I think it's so important that we are reframing that. But that's where architecture, structure, there are so many mistakes. If you've never done that and you need to do that, getting help and setting it up right so that you will actually say that these are the best days of your year, is when you come together with your board, because you realize, wow, there's an energy, there's an excitement in the room, and an anticipation that is growing when you are together. It's a whole different game. It has nothing to do with being boring and kind of wanting to control you. It's actually what will lift you up.
Yeah. You're 100% right, and I want to kind of take it, because we're talking about this room. I think in one of our former episodes I talked about that. I think about rooms that we need to get into. How do you get into rooms? Your level of success is determined by the rooms you're being invited into, which is very true. Now, it's almost like a physical space that you need to provide. And so one of the next lessons that I've taken from Lorenzo is you need to pay for this. Okay, don't be cheap. Okay, and what do I mean? Like to get genius in the room, it needs to be intentionally curated. It doesn't happen by accident, and there's a bill to be picked up on this. Okay, the board positions. Sometimes for people who don't come out of the industry, or lots of business owners that I've had conversations with, they've just grown their business and they have lots of companies, blah blah blah, but they've never put together a board. And then all of a sudden, you kind of look at this and like, my friend, what you need next in your development is to put an advisory board in here that kind of helps you reach the next level. It's another level, but you need to be willing to pay for that. There's a price to be paid. And then something like, oh well, how do I pay $100,000, for a couple meetings here a year or something, and for people to kind of fly in, and I need to pay business class tickets for, I'm like, grow up in your business development. You have to pay to get the right people in the room, and that can totally change your game.
So if there's an organization that, let's say, they are not at that level yet to kind of put in a board on that level that you just shared, what would be kind of the kind of a step we all could take in a small, medium-sized company, so that we're not waiting for a formal board to put in place, but actually to have the strategic genius circle around? What would be your suggestion?
Well, I mean, I have joined a few boards. I'm serving on a few boards where I'm giving strategic insight from my perspective, and where I'm helping. And let me just say what my process is. I never take a board position without actually me sitting together for a day to do some strategic consulting on the company before I join anything. I get a lot of kind of requests that go in that direction, and I'm like, well, I'm not looking for a job. I'm not looking for another position here, please. But I have some things that I want, and that I invest into, And so, and I take a day or a couple days. It's either 1 or 2 days where I go and basically we do it a day together. And I come breakthrough days because I've done this so many times for so different industries that it is absolutely breakthrough material that kind of comes out of that. And then afterwards, I basically make a decision whether I am willing to go and serve on the board. So there's a process that actually leads towards that. Okay, I'm always hesitant if people just accept. I mean, sounds like nice, getting 100 grand, getting 200 grand, getting 300 grand for like a board position where you do work 2 days a year. Yeah, that sounds nice. But and I'd be suspicious of people just accepting that. You need that needs to be curated.
Yeah. So when when people really, the lesson that I really want that people understand is that there's a difference between the operational room where you are just talking about operations, where it's just your everyday kind of a business, and then there's this advisor. You slow down. You are not as quick making decisions. You are thinking through. It's really the strategy part. We had a whole episode on how do you actually go through a strategy framework. But this is kind of next level because you're not now doing it alone. Basically, you are adapting, if it's curated right, the superpower, so to speak, of other people to kind of solve your problems and your bottlenecks. And if you are thinking and proud enough to think that you don't need that kind of an advice, you will never reach the level that you need. So I talked yesterday to somebody and they wanted some help, and I kind of put out my price and they looked at well, this is expensive, and I was like, yes, this is expensive, and the return is you will get faster there, and you will scale it even bigger by that help. If you make that comparison to what you basically get, it's all of a sudden it's a bargain, it's a bargain. And the same is true when it comes to really investing yourself in a mastermind or then in an official kind of a board that you pay for, because you realize that yes, it might be a big check in the beginning to get started, but you will get faster to your goals, and actually there is a higher chance that you actually are going to get to your goals if you have that surrounded.
Yeah, so the sickness that business owners have is that they're most of the time the smartest person in the room. If you've started a company and you've built it from the ground up, and I'm talking first generation kind of thinking here, first generation wealth creators, is you're the smartest person in the room. You've done everything from answering the phone to sending out emails to selling to kind of building the product and so forth. So this is that's your strength, but it's also your biggest weakness because you're used in every meeting you call within your company, every team meeting, blah. It's always you're the smartest guy in the room. Now, let me just tell you, that is a lid on your organization, okay? And the only way to get that out is by surrounding yourself with genius, and that's what needs to be curated. Okay, let me get down more to practical stuff. If you've built a company, and obviously this is industry, a little bit a different industry, but roughly I would say, if your company is on 3 million revenue, okay, roughly, you need to start thinking strategically about some outside advisory kind of realm, okay? Probably more on a group setting than just you just running your own board. If you jump over 10 million, and I know guys who have 100 million revenue company or within their company structures, and they still haven't put this together, and it's a huge issue. It's huge. I just did some consulting for a company holding structures in the US in Texas, where I've looked at the different things, and it's just wonderfully grown as a family business, kind of developed. But when I looked at it, and I spent the day, I did this breakthrough session with them. When I looked at the whole setup, I'm like, man, there is so much untapped potential in this organization, in this business, but it's almost like they stand in front of they're standing in the forest in front of the tree, and they don't see the forest. Right. And this is where the step back and getting some people from other countries, from other industries, from other expertise, like people who've really been successful in their realm, to kind of walk alongside. This can be $1 billion organization. I mean, and this is what they want, and they got so excited. Not of me saying that, but really kind of getting this kind of a strategic insight from that they've not seen.
We see that in the Medici communities. We have now 25 different countries or 26 different countries, and I would say 50 different industries, 60 different industries, maybe more. Some people in the beginning were hesitant, were like, oh, I'm not sure if I want to kind of join a community with that are not all part of my industry. And now one of the best feedbacks we get is actually, you know what, actually that I get this cross-cultural but cross-industry learning and thinking. And that's just, you know, by a larger community. That can be 10x to the smaller masterminds. But that already is kind of the big thing, because you all of a sudden, you know, that in one industry, you know, they do marketing and everybody does it in the same way. And it is successful because it's standard. Now, in the other industry, they would never do this because we don't do this in this industry. Well, you learn how to do it from here, and you basically implement it in your industry, and you are all of a sudden have a unique selling proposition or a unique marketing proposition, because you actually are now doing something that nobody else is doing. It takes leadership to actually have that, have the guts to do it. But all of a sudden, you can really kind of take something from another industry, put it into your industry, and that already can really kind of increase what you're doing. And that's the exciting thing of when you are just learning together.
Yeah, so kind of finishing this topic off, if there's a way for us through Medici to help you on kind of, you know, working on the next level. We've put together some masterminds, some inner circles where we're helping and curating. You know, feel free to reach out. We have a bunch of criteria and an assessment whether it actually makes sense. You know, I have zero time to help people where it makes no sense, and so there's an assessment that is necessary in order to do that. There's some time that needs to be spent kind of on looking at that. But then, you know, what is spending a couple $100,000 on kind of your next on your next step when you can unleash millions in revenue. So it's part of business development. That's what I would say. You know, yes. It's a painting from the Renaissance, but it's business development 101. When you not 101, but it's 201.
Well, it's when you look at business and you are growing. You know, okay, at some point you do need a marketing department. At some point you do need a sales department. At some point you actually need an HR department, or IT department, and often people just they don't think of that department
they don't think of themselves. So it's actually you need some help.
Yeah.
So we're as you know. We're quick to say, oh, our executive team needs help. We need to buy them some coaching. You know, we need our sales team. Oh, we need to find a trainer to coach them. And we never think of ourselves, because we're kind of the smart ass, okay, in the room. Well, and this is where I'm like, sorry, my friend, is you need some help. You need to surround yourself with genius, and that's why, and you need to curate it.
Yeah. So if you're interested, get in touch. We have different offerings there where we participate in, and it helps us, and we do it so that we can actually surround ourselves with genius. That was the whole idea behind the Medici community in the first place, is that we can actually host that and that way actually have people that we would never dreamed of actually kind of in our inner circle through what has developed. So thanks so much for listening, and develop your inner circle, your genius circle, and we'll hear each other in the next episode.